All right, everyone, welcome back to Adaptation. And my name is Kelsey, and we have a special guest. We're going to skip Swader.
Hell yeah.
Special guest
Right at the top.
for this episode, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Juile Swader. You can probably guess I'm Eric's wife and first guest on the Adaptation podcast. And excited to be here.
So excited to have you.
And first guest in my heart.
Gross.
Yeah.
First and only.
Yeah.
And there's Swader, too. So Swader's here as well.
I got eliminated in the roll call. Apropos of this episode.
That's okay. And if you haven't guessed, I mean, from the title, you clicked on this episode, you're listening to it right now, but we're doing The Hunger Games, the first movie in the first book only, folks. We're not going to do a deep dive into the series, so be prepared. As always, if you have not read or watched this and don't want spoilers, stop listening right now.
Yeah.
We spoil it for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, let's get into it. Loglines. Swader.
Teenage girl struggles to survive in turbulent authoritarian society.
Good.
Yeah.
Julie?
Skip being come back to me.
I would say kind of teenage girl struggles to survive dystopian killing games
Yeah.
and has to decide what truly matters by the end.
There it is.
Yeah. We have character number 1, numero uno. Who is that?
Miss Katniss Everdeen of District 12.
District 12. It's important because there are 12 districts in this movie and book. She's from the last one.
Yeah.
So if you want to describe District 12 for us, Julie.
All of the best parts of Appalachia and rolling hills, green, and coal mines on coal mines on coal mines is how they depict it in the book. It's where we are, technically.
Technically, we are in District 12, but a large, District 12 is a little snippage.
Yeah.
I think they lost most of the coastal lands in the book, and they're really good in the movie, but it's like the water actually rose from global warming, and they lost all the coastal lands, and so...
Yeah, if we were to be part of District 12, we would be the northernmost tip of it, where it butts up against where 13 is supposed to be.
Gotcha.
But I think all of the Great Lakes also flood, and it screws up the map a little bit.
All right, so we're in District 12, and we have Katniss Everdeen. She volunteers and who does she volunteer for?
Her much younger sister, Primrose.
Primrose Everdeen.
And her first reaping as a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, because every subsequent year you get an extra entry.
Yeah, so she had one, and what do they say in the book? It's like thousands of entries, and she still gets picked. Well, Katniss had something like 40. Gale had
plus.
Yeah, Gale has something like 60.
Because of the concept they gloss over in the movie, but is gone into in detail in the book, the Tesserae, which are essentially buying against your odds and future draws for advantages, short-term advantages, things like oil and grain, things that you can use to survive.
So they basically play off of the poverty of the district and be like, hey, you're starving, here's extra grain, but we're going to enter you all, every month you can get a Tesserae.
Yeah.
So every month you could get extra supplies.
Yeah.
And those don't go away at the end of the year. They compound. Say another character that you mentioned briefly, we're going to get into him as well. He, from the age of 12, almost every month had Tesserae.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to do that math where, Gale has gotten them every month for about 5 years or 6 years. And then Katniss is in the same boat where she started getting them at age 12 or 13 and has gotten them ever since. And it's a really interesting part that is kind of glossed over in the movie, where it's the more disenfranchised people in the district end up getting pulled a lot more to be in the games because of the Tesserae. Because they're desperate for food.
Yeah.
So you could have wealthy people in the poor districts, but they're not going to have as many pulls.
Yeah, the upper echelons, the softer areas, as they refer to it in the book, like where some of the characters, including another character, Peeta Mellark, the male tribute, lives, where they do have sort of a functional business district and a more complex economy, whereas Katniss comes from the seam, where in reference to coal seams, where folks struggle, and they are producing coal and energy for Pan Am, which is the newest iteration of the collapsed United States,
the Republic of Pan Am. So it's interesting that PETA is one of the upper echelon people, and so he doesn't have Tesserae.
Yeah.
It's implied that he never had to get Tesserae, and yet he was also still picked.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting that it's all relative, because even they, compared to, say, folks in the capital, or even, folks in District 1, the wealthier districts, which produce products that are in higher demand, like electronics, are even more advantaged than that. So the striations that Susan Collins, the author, really establishes in the novel are really, really interesting and very layered. So
we gloss over Gale. If you want to go into Gale, who's Gale?
Gale is Katniss's best friend. They grew up together. He's also a boy, eldest in his family, lives in the seam. I believe at the beginning of this book, he is freshly 18, so it's his last year of the reaping. Mm-hmm. And he and Katniss hunt together when they sneak under the fence out into the woods outside of their district to go hunting for their families and provide for their families. So they're both very much providers. They're both very much caretakers, and they really get each other and kind of mirror each other in a way. Gale is more, he's more of an optimist, and Katniss is more of the pessimist in that mirroring of each other, where they are so similar, but then there are things that they just can't agree on. And I think that's interesting.
Oh, yeah. They definitely disagree on whether or not they would want to have families in the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting early point, because Gale gets kind of mad at her, and she's not sure why. Because she says I would never have children because she's had such a hard time bringing up her own sister, and, after the death of her father and everything. And then Gale, who has like 9,000 little brothers, I'm pretty sure in the book, 4 or 5, is like, I'd have a kid if we weren't here. Like,
but we are here.
Yeah, but we are here is the whole point.
Which is interesting, because I think when these novels came out, it was at the beginning of Obama's presidency. So like in 2009, I believe the first novel comes out. And I do think it kind of reflects the lives of young people and people born into this generation, where they have to make calculations about the state of the world and the direction of things. We are, especially Americans, aren't, used to this level of confusion and uncertainty about the future. And it's interesting that she struck those notes at a time when arguably young people were as optimistic as they had ever been, or at least certainly since the early part of the Kennedy era. And I think that the parallel that she draws to that is really sharp. And I think kind of prescient, because she talks about stuff like climate change, the idea that parts of the country were going to be subsumed by crisis. And even through that sort of very optimistic period, she gets that, it might not be this way forever.
Mm-hmm. The political time at that time, I don't know. My sister was 18 at the time, my oldest sister, 18 or 19. She was definitely not thinking about kids at that time, but it would have been interesting to talk to people who were of that type of age range to see if it had influenced that time period, whether they wanted to have kids or not.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, nowadays, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those hard decisions of Katniss being I'm never going to have children because I don't want them to get put through that.
Yeah.
And Gale trying to be the optimist side of well, I'd be a good dad basically. And he loves Katniss, spoiler. So he wanted to have kids with her eventually, clearly.
Yeah.
But now there's the decision of maybe it's just not in the cards, and more people are being open about it not being in the cards for them.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think it's also because at the time, it was very much Suzanne Collins really gripped on the dystopic, teen novel of the time, and was really the baseline for the main character is a girl, and she's going to be the special in this universe, and there will be at least one hot guy who's super into her.
At least one.
And there will be the happening, which is something happening to her in which she gets taken somewhere else, and then now it's this thing. But this was so much the baseline of that it was I don't want to say it was the original. There's been 800 million different versions of this story told over time, but it is so honest to itself that I think it's kind of the classic version for anybody who grew up like we did with it as a book, going, oh, this is the original, and everything else after that, Divergent, all of the
Divergent, Maze Runner, all the other ones. Divergent, I think, is a copycat of Hunger Games. It has the different factions.
It created a YA genre for itself, but also Katniss being a character who is very much not like other YA main characters, where she is kind of broody and pessimistic and straight up at the beginning is, I don't want to have kids. I hate living like this. I've had a hard life. I just want to take care of my family. And then going from there and listening to her talk throughout the book of the way that she interprets things, everything is a calculation for how can I use this to protect myself, my family, the people I care about. Mm-hmm. It's survival, and it's survival put on somebody who shouldn't have to have thought about it. So at a very early age. So she was taking care of her sister, because you mentioned that her father died.
Yeah.
She was 11 and change, so she wasn't old enough to get Tesserae and get extra food.
Yeah.
But her mom went into deep depression, so she had to take care of her little sister, who was, I think, 8. It's like responsibility thrust upon an age that you should not have to do that.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about that in A Fault in Our Stars, like the maturity level.
Having to confront mortality in a way that I think most Americans don't. I mean, at some point, every human being becomes aware that they are mortal and are going to die. Mm-hmm. But the idea that it could happen imminently is not something that most Americans, for a while, see on their radar. And I think what is kind of fascinating about it is they talk about how skilled she is as a hunter, and how working with Gale, who is very good with traps and snares, becomes very adept at sort of surviving in nature. But even that is compromised by the authoritarian society she lives in, because they place, in this case, poorly enforced, but still onerous laws on who can use hunting grounds, who can use those spaces, which is a lot like how the monarchs of Europe operated for quite a long time.
King James and Robin Hood met men in tights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seen poaching in the King's Forest.
Yeah. But it's the idea that you have this generation of people trapped in a society where would a situation where all they had was agriculture and hunting, and they lacked a lot of technology, would that present a new set of challenges? Sure, but it would be more honest than what they're currently living in, which is a society in which their lives are being extracted. Mm-hmm. Their livelihoods and futures are being extracted.
And the monoculture only doing coal mining, where they live in, again, Appalachia, where they can hunt and fish and, trap animals and gather berries, and they have this rich ecosystem that they live within. But the only thing that the capital wants from them is coal. So that's the whole point, is give us your coal and
your lives.
And and Katniss's whole thing is, well, they would put me to death if anybody that also lived in District 12 cared.
Yeah, right.
But because everybody else here is so limited in the game that they can get, the berries, the food that they can get, everybody's willing to kind of turn a blind eye, because, like, the baker wants squirrels.
There's a benign neglect that sets in, because exactly. Everybody, if they had no want for food, then people might be angrier, but or peacekeepers might enforce those things. But as things are,
peacekeepers were also hungry. Peacekeepers were the one that would pay the most for their games. So they were willing to overlook the loss, because that meant they got to eat meat.
Yeah, they got fresh protein. Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like you brought up with PETA, like he lived in the he was one of the market kids. He was one of the kids that had affluence in District 12, and he was still not well taken care of. And he says in the book a couple of times, like, Yeah, we never got to eat like fresh bread.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in a bakery and I've never really had fresh bread. Forget like eating a brand new cake or a pastry or something that I got to decorate really prettily or like anything like that. It was, yeah, we never really got fresh bread. And then there's also the added factor of his mom was horribly abusive to him and his brothers. So it's that level of it too.
Definitely, that was definitely one of the bigger omissions. We'll go into the similarities and differences was the omission of some of those side characters and Peeta's mom as a more central character. She is shown in the movie in the one scene where he does toss the bread to Katniss. Yes. She's in there kind of smacking the side of his
It's very featured extra. It's very like,
features extra. You don't have a speaking role. You don't get SAG credits.
Yeah, the director did not talk to you. Well, but I think that kind of brings us to where the action starts, which is at the reaping, when Effie comes to town. In this case, you have a character that I think is so well written on the page and then has to be cast very specifically and then is cast perfectly. Like it ends up being Elizabeth Banks in the film. And she's the first taste that we get of the tastes and styles of the capital, which are very indicative of a land of plenty and of a society that is sort of provided for, and as a result they're sort of given to whims and fancies, and you can tell in her design and aesthetic choices in her wardrobe and hair, like it's crazy.
It's nuts capital fashion, and it's probably because they don't have to worry about eating.
Yeah, for sure.
And then that means their creative juices and fashion can overflow.
Yeah.
And I mean overflow because it gets crazy.
It's like it's French aristocracy meets Blade Runner. Like it is nuts.
Especially her outfit, her wig in the first. That's a perfect description of her wig during the reaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's spinning around on her head as she's trying to pull names, and Haymitch is falling off the stage drunk and everything. It's a perfect. Yeah. Perfect casting, like you said. I think Elizabeth Banks is great. My claim to fame and why I wanted to do this as a podcast, as a teenage girl with a Tumblr blog in the mid to late aughts, I ran a moderately successful fan account that posted primarily Hunger Games content along with several other YA novels that are not to be named. And as a
tag if you remember, tag if you were there.
In the tumble sphere.
You will never pry the name of it out of me ever. But I had a couple thousand followers, and as a very junior graphic designer was vaguely popular on there. So I was very much in the, well, who's going to play Haymitch in this? And
I ate that shit up. Tumblr, but I was your Tumblr fan, 100%.
Just post on post of every young actor and actress that could possibly play one of these characters, and who will be Haymitch and who will be Effie. I've reposted so many of those over the years. But I do think Elizabeth Banks adds a lot to the character. There's a lot more humanity, I think, in her from the jump in her adaptation of Effie, where in the book she's a little bit more hollow throughout the first book, where in the movie you get a little bit more of a sense that she does care about Katniss and Peeta and
at least take some pride in treating them better than the other representatives who manage their districts. Because I think that there's a great line in the movie eventually where they're all sitting around a table eating. And they're all talking about the relative advantages of the other districts, and she says, and the other districts don't get dessert. You get dessert. Like, which is, you're sending these kids to die. And you're like, but.
Get to eat.
I totally thought you were going to bring up, this is mahogany.
That's also great.
One of the funniest choices.
But she does think that, like, if she's keeping these kids, she's like, I'll get you treats. Like,
yeah, she's going to take care of her wards as long as they are her wards. And she gets upset with Haymitch in a really big way for not acting in the way that he should.
Yeah.
To get them the things that they need to try to survive too. And I think that's really interesting. Where, I mean, have we talked about Haymitch? No.
Not yet, but we should.
There's one side note with Effie before we jump into Haymitch, in that the book, it made it more clear that she has been the escort for 12 for a long time.
Yeah.
Because you really only get promoted from lower districts if your victors win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she's been stuck with 12 for forever. So she, along with Haymitch, who we'll get into, has seen the revolving door of dead 12 district kids for years, but she handles it much different than Haymitch.
Yeah.
And who is Haymitch?
Haymitch Abernathy, who was the victor of the last. It's a concept. I don't know if they bring it up in this, but they bring it up in subsequent books. Of a much more savage version called the Quarter Quell. And
every 25 years.
Every 25 years, they up the stakes, which is a concept they establish later. But when we meet him in this book, he is, as you can imagine, a not even functioning alcoholic who did not, as you can imagine, absorb the trauma of murdering other children particularly well.
I don't know if it was the actual Hunger Games, and there's a new book. We're also doing this because a new book has just came out, which is his games.
Yeah, Sunrise on the Reaping, which just came out about last week.
I have my hold at the library.
Oh, yes.
So what they go into in like fan fiction, probably your Tumblr, is what I was like, I need to know everything about Haymitch's games because they go into it a bit during the series. But I think he handled the games okay. But the way he won, they targeted his family.
He was very similar. He's similar to Katniss in that he won in a way that did not. Spoiler alert: she wins. Please the capital very much, and he loses a great deal of people in his life because of that, and kind of spends the next 20 or so years crashing out because of that. Which fair.
His decision caused them to be targeted.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting because when we see him at this point, and I think intentionally so, it's so much of it is from Katniss's perspective that we just don't know yet. And he's so shut off that he's a mystery. You can make assumptions about why he's so shut down at this point, but that's his mystique early on, is that he's something about the process traumatized him. And he is not, the kind of mentor that the careers would have in the wealthier, more successful districts. Kids who train basically from birth to fight in these games in the event that they're recruited. Because he's a human being. And I think the system and the process shows you very quickly the people and participants in the process who are forced to do it and go along to survive, and those who surprisingly take to it.
Choose. Yeah. So again, like with Effie, it's the same revolving door of kids over years and years and years. He's been a victor for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So he's been a mentor for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And he's seen 2 times 20, like 40 kids die on his watch, basically, because there's nothing he can do about it. They're poor, they're hungry, they're malnourished. The careers are not.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think that's a really interesting turning point for him, just story-wise, whenever they're on the train and he realizes that Katniss and Peeta are both fighters in their own way, and it piques his interest enough to be like, you guys could actually do this. Like, you're not going to live, but you could make a good stab at this.
You're not going to win. He really says
he's very much like, just try to stay alive and it might be interesting.
Yeah. Well, because the careers are trained to win, but Katniss has lived to survive.
Yeah.
That's her big advantage, is that this is not a game or competition. This is a survival in a way that a lot of the other participants haven't had to do. And
I think his interest in her early on is they can't stand each other because she's not incredibly palatable as a tribute, and she can't stand him because she doesn't fully understand where he's coming from at this point in time, and he's a drunk. But I think that they're really similar in their ire for the capital, the hatred of the system they've been put into. But he sees in her like he had to survive this thing and he just survived it somehow, where she has had to survive everything for so long that she's equipped for it, that he can see like, oh, she's ready for this. Like she could actually do this. And that's what sobers him up and he starts to actually, work for them.
Do his job.
Yeah.
And they're very similar in the sense that they're both very intelligent people. I think that's the hard thing, that a system like this is very punishing to intelligent people because it needs to keep them down.
They're intelligent in different ways. She's intelligent in hunting, surviving, doing those practical skills. Now, PETA is intelligent in being a PR guy.
Yeah. Oh, I meant Haymitch. I meant that. Oh, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So,
Yeah.
That's why I think another reason why him and Katniss butt heads is because he needs her to be the PR person and she has the practical physical skills.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
So it's like, I don't know how to communicate with you because you need to be both.
It's not something that you can teach a person in the amount of time that they have together.
Yeah.
And it gets so mad because it's, why does PETA have this thing so quickly that you can just not do for some reason?
Right.
And I think it's a lot, like you said, it's how PETA and Katniss both came up, where it's the manipulation of it all. Like Katniss has had to look over her shoulder for her entire life, basically, and go, what is it that you want from me and why? And how are we, how am I going to respond to these, this thing you want from me? Or are you being sincere or are you not being sincere? And PETA's is operating in he's much more in tune with his emotions because he had the ability to be, but he also grew up in a very abusive household where he had to manipulate his emotions so to not bring down, all of the abuse and pain onto himself.
That's true. That's a great point.
He's very good at smiling when you don't want to smile, and smile and wave, and don't let them see how screwed up you are right now. And just, that's why he gets along with all of the other victors and all of the, like you said, he's the PR guy. He's very good at turning that on and turning it off and just being like, well, that sucked. And then Katniss is like, thinks that it's fake in a way that it's not. It's a survival tactic from him that she doesn't understand because she's never done that. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. This is one of those areas where I thought the contrast to the book was really fascinating, because by this point, we've buttoned up most of our coverage of District 12. And at this point in the book, Susan Collins has done this incredible job describing a very intricate little society that's emerged in response to, like, very onerous and very severe sort of capital policies and laws. And then in the movie really condenses it in I think ways that ultimately do work because they focus it on her experience specifically. And not for nothing, but it was Susan Collins herself who wrote the screenplay, adapted the screenplay, along with Gary Ross, the director, as well as screenwriter Billy Ray. And I think it was a good call because they do a good job extracting the elements from the book that give Katniss her direction, her drive, her motivations. And then they do a really good job. She does a really good job splitting up a lot of her narration, which in the book is a massive part of how she explains and how we're introduced to this world. And then this is, especially going to the Capitol, this is where she finds so many really interesting ways to work that narration to different facets of the movie by giving more meat to other characters in the book.
Show, don't tell. So obviously this is she narrates.
Yeah.
She narrates everything to a degree which I love. It's describing the people of the Capitol, the people in the train with her as like these over the top people who are just so decorated and everything, but there's so much of an affectation of, at one point I think she says, the way that they talk is this like put on thing where everybody goes up at the end of their sentences.
Ads be ever in your favor.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a Valley Girl thing, but also, it's very like, it's Jackie Kennedy, very, what's that called?
High-pitched Midwestern.
Like a mid-Atlantic.
There's a mid-Atlantic accent. It's what FDR essentially had.
Or that they're so like put upon and everything, and that grosses out Katniss so bad where, I mean, in the movie they're able to show you every person that's a Capitol person who's working on this train is very much that. And then there's her and PETA who are just kind of people.
Yeah.
We're just people.
We're just guys.
Well, it's like a posh accent.
We're just guys.
Well, it's like a posh accent. It's the idea of which is kind of faded in America mostly, where it's become mostly, when you hear it, it's like a broadcast news affectation, where they sort of flatten regional dialects into something that is palatable for everybody. But that's the most that you hear of it, and I think it's interesting that she makes such a point of discussing that accent, because it's a very striated society. It's sort of the posh English and then the varieties of accents that you see in different regions based on shared culture and things like that.
In region.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can look to every English accent, British accent across the board, and every little district has its own Cockney.
Yeah.
Sussex, Liverpool. Like, they all have very different accents. However, they did more of all the outlying districts have a similar accent, and then capital's the only differing one. It's like Queen's English.
Yeah, well, it's the Valley Girl thing of, unless you're from California, you really didn't hear that for a long time, and then it became such a pop culture touchstone that people were putting it on, that it's everybody in the capital kind of puts it on to, and then everybody in the districts doesn't have the time of day for
They gotta eat.
Yeah, there's no. I'm sure some of the careers are a little bit more in that camp, but still, like, it's a very specific subset of the people who live in Pan Am that it's these really put on kind of personas that they put out there.
Outrageous.
Yeah, outrageous.
Yeah,
everybody's a little bit outrageous. And I think that's, listening to that from Katniss's point of view too is very interesting.
We've talked about careers a couple of times. In the book, it's more set aside, like the victors who train in training camps and volunteer. So the fact that she, in an outlying district of 12, volunteered was so rare.
Yeah.
Because no one does, even for family, because they know it's almost sure death.
Yeah.
To volunteer in an outlying district. But the districts of 1, 2, and in the book it's 4 are career districts where they train and then they actually volunteer for the games.
Yeah, they have a whole system for putting your name in to volunteer, whereas in 12, her just screaming like, I volunteer! Everybody was like, what are you doing? Because they don't have that same system built out there.
They even forgot, I think, the rules and specifics about how you do it because no one had done it.
I think Effie's like, I think you have to wait for us to call for volunteers.
It's like a Senate thing where the parliamentarian has to say X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, what are the rules for this again? Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Who cares? Just come up here.
Yeah, she's volunteering.
Yeah.
So we get to the Capitol. They've taken the bullet train basically to the Capitol for training for a week. It's not really clear in the movie that it is a full week. In the book, it is they're there for a week training before they go into the, quote, arena, the arena of death. And why were the Hunger Games created in the first place? I think that's a really good, important thing to know going into this, and why it motivates the entire series and the leader who we haven't gone into yet, President Snow. So why were the Hunger Games created?
Functionally to punish the rebellion, but also to create such a powerful disincentive to ever do it again, and for anyone to ever do it again.
Yeah, there was version 1 Pan Am, and then the rebellion of the people in the districts basically being like, this is bullshit. We can't live like this. And then the Dark Days, which was basically the capital sucking up all of the power in the world, and leaving everybody else in the districts that weren't at the time really districted then, I believe. And basically taking everything away from them that they could, and then creating these districts to be like, you give us coal, and we'll give you maybe enough food if we feel like it.
But it might be spoiled depending on the circumstances, and if we're mad at you.
And in return, every year we're going to take one of your boys and one of your girls that are between the ages of 12 and 18, and we're going to put them into a ring with all of the other districts, and we're going to make them kill each other because that's fun for us.
It's fun, and I think in the later parts of the series, they hone in on Snow's reasoning why he's kept it up and made it more of a show, is more of a distraction from rebelling.
Yeah.
Also, like Gail made a good point in the movie, you root for the people you like, you cry when your favorites die. It can also go the same way, like you see somebody from District 4 kill somebody from your district, and it sows resentment.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, well, they killed one of us.
Yeah.
So what better way to keep you divided is if you just hate each other.
Screw District 1 and 2. I hate the careers.
Exactly.
I'm District 4 only.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's when Gary Ross was hired to direct and he started working with Collins on the script, they add those scenes in the movie where Seneca Crane is talking to President Snow, who's a barely literal presence in the book, because he wanted to give people a sense that to Seneca Crane, the game master, and the people who work for him, yes, this is show business and you're entertaining people. You know, for Caesar Flickerman, the host of the talk show that revolves around the games, you're entertaining people. But for Snow, this is a method of control. It is a powerful tool for control. And the idea of show business is a facade. Yes,
for sure, which is kind of scary if you think about our regular show business as a facade for something else. Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah.
So we get to the Capitol, we're going through training week, and you learn different skills, and you're introduced to some of the tributes. You know a little bit more about the tributes in the book going into it than the movie. They are kind of glanced over. But one person that does show up prominent in the training center is the little girl from District 11.
My Shayla! Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, Rue. Very important. Yeah, District 11. She's from an agricultural district. She is the exact same age as Katniss's little sister. Suzanne Collins does an amazing job in the book of describing how she is so similar to Prim, but different in these ways where she's just so light on her feet and fleet-footed. There's one part where she describes as it's her standing on her tiptoes with her arms out to her sides like she's about to take flight, like a little bird. And she describes so much of her working in the orchards with her family and being able to climb these really tall trees and kind of stay out of the thick of it. And she kind of becomes Katniss's shadow in a way. I think she kind of sees that, hey, this is a person that could probably protect me or isn't, going to kill me. Looking at some of the careers and things, they are outwardly terrifying. Whereas Katniss is kind of more subdued and keeps to herself and is really just kind of focused on, hunting and gathering and the things that, will keep her alive. And I think she relates to that in a way.
She also, in the book, it was described that she knew she could trust Katniss when she saw her golden pin. When she saw the Mockingjay pin. In the movie, it's given to Katniss by one of the hob vendors. And then she gives it to Prim, who unluckily wears it to the Reaping, who gets chosen. And then Prim gives it back to Katniss as a good luck charm.
Because it was her good luck charm. If you wear this, you'll have good luck. And then she gets picked and she's like, well, here you go.
Yeah.
Good luck to you, I guess. And I'm like,
some luck, yeah.
That kind of run around for me was a little interesting because if I was Katniss, I'd be like, I don't want that. You just got reaped with that pin. But the Mockingjay is a symbol for Rue in District 11 because they use the Mockingjays as resources to signal the end of the day. And how do they do that?
Yeah, to
with a 4-note tone, essentially, that they can repeat to these birds who were native birds in the districts, and then these mutation birds, these genetically altered species that were created in the capital to gain information and spy on the rebels during the war. At which point the rebels figured out what was going on and just started feeding them bad information. What's funny is that, like Jurassic Park style, they were meant to die. They were not meant to mate in the wild, but life finds a way. And they mated with native birds, and these Mockingjays now exist and can repeat these tones and speech and things like that.
The sounds around them, where they say that they've evolved to a point where they really can't repeat human speech, but they can repeat songs or tones or later in the books, Katniss, I know, can recall that sounds like PETA through a Mockingjay, just his tone of voice and things. Where it's this thing that is used in Rue's district to be like, it's the end of the day. It's, we're doing this. It's
the work
way
whistle.
that it's the work whistle. It's how they communicate to one another while they're working in these orchards.
Yeah.
And she saw it and she was like, oh, that's where I am too. So she thought she could relate. And it's how they tie themselves to one another. Mm-hmm. Whereas Katniss looks at her and is just like, that's just my little sister.
That's my little sister, and I'm just wearing a pin.
Yeah.
To the point where I wondered, reading the book and watching the movie to an extent, how different it would have been if Primrose had to go, and imagining how they might have survived together, she and Rue. And
I feel like they could have gone far.
In a way, I think it would have been a different dynamic than the alliance that they eventually form.
The main point I want to make at this point is the Primrose, Katniss, Rue thing. They're all flowers. They're all kinds of plants. Mm-hmm. And like Primrose is like a dainty little flower. Rue is like a little tiny yellow flower, so tiny, floats in the wind kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Which comes up later, the yellow flowers. And then Katniss is basically a potato, but it's something that's going to keep you alive.
Roots are strong. That's the thing, is she is a strong person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think the relationship between Katniss and these little tiny pretty flowers and how she relates them to each other through that is really interesting. Mm-hmm. But that's also how she kind of differentiates them too, where Primrose is this little being that she's had to take care of for so long, but she's also so like her mom and she can care for herself and everything. And then she's like, Rue is this tiny little bird who hides in the trees that I just need to make sure doesn't die.
Mm-hmm. Which, funnily enough, when I had this thought when we were just starting to talk about Rue, the only reason Rue was on the ground where she, spoiler alert, gets killed by Marvel, who's played by Nepo Baby.
Hollywood's good boy, Jack Quaid.
Really, the only reason she was down there long term was for her alliance with Katniss. Mm-hmm. So if she never allied with Katniss,
she would have been able to stay in the trees.
She would have been able to stay in the trees, and she probably would have lived a lot longer.
Yeah.
Not saying she would have won.
Yeah.
But I feel like she needed to die. That's always horrible with stories. Like, a character needs to die to further along the story, and she does it in a good way, like a beautiful way. Yeah. That creates emotion, which I really appreciated. Yeah. But we'll get into Rue's demise later on. So we're coming up. We have one other character before we go in. That's Cinna, her stylist.
Yeah. Played by Lenny Kravitz.
Such off-wall.
Such off-the-wall casting that I believe is perfect in every way, and I will defend it until my dying breath.
Well, it's so rare that I think you have a singer turned actor who actually has the charisma to do it. Because it's a different, obviously, a lot of performers have charisma. Any kind of performance, you need a certain kind of charisma. But stage presence and film presence are very different. Oh, yeah. And he is so effective, and because he is such a stylish presence, but very reserved and laid back. Like, he is exactly the right fit for Cinna. Ends up being perfect.
Intensely charismatic without being over the top. And they describe him in the book as like all of these garish, over the top capital people. And then he's described as pretty subdued comparatively, and he's got like kind of capital-ish clothing on, but not really. And the only like outstanding thing about him is he's got on gold eyeliner. And Katniss, who hates all of the capital fashion, is like, it kind of works for him. Yeah. I'm not mad at it. I don't hate him for it because it looks good. Yeah. And then from talking to him and everything and having, these interactions with him, she realizes like he's actually a very genuine person and goes out of his way for her all the time and everything and designs these looks for her that actually say something.
He's their PR person. Yeah. It's like, Effie is their escort, the stylist, Portia and Cinna for Peeta and Katniss are the PR people for the tributes. Yeah. And it's funny, Cinna, this is his first year as a stylist. Yeah. So he has something to prove in his own right? But he also, I think, because he's more toned down, he hasn't seen all of these things. He's not as disillusioned. It's his first time around. He's given his best shot, and he does a great job.
Yeah, I do think it's also he's got something to say, because there's the point in the book where she's like, oh yeah, you get stuck with District 12 because it's your first year, and he's like, no, I picked you.
Yeah.
And she's like, doesn't know whether she believes him or not, but then she's like, I don't think he's lying to me. Why would you pick me? Like, why would you pick me for this? And then sees his designs and everything and what he's trying to say through her. Mm-hmm. And it becomes a lot more sincere. She understands where he's coming from.
Pretty sure he picked them after she volunteered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he saw the courage and saw the girl on fire in that act. And I think that's maybe what made him pick her.
Well, and I think, too, that he's such a fascinating character to see, because you have to really fight to see compassion from the people who are preparing these children to go do this horrible thing. Mm-hmm. And Sin is one of the handful of people who seems to have kept his humanity, who seems to have kept, who genuinely does not want to see Katniss and Peeta suffer. Mm-hmm. And I think that in the Capitol is where you really find, I think maybe more so in the movie, the depth of some of these people. I think especially people like Haymitch, for example, mm-hmm. who, as the games begin, starts to find there's such great coverage of him sort of looking around the Capitol at these children sort of with plastic toy swords, sort of wantonly playing at violence with each other. Mm-hmm. And he's disgusted by it. And you can tell that there are these seeds of disgust that are forming. It's why the story starts when it does with Katniss, because society has reached a tipping point, or is starting to reach a tipping point. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until Katniss that they realized something has to give.
And I think it's because also they mentioned that, like, family ties only go so far, even in the outlying district. And because what she did was so out of the norm, there had to be a reason. I think that was like a light switch for some people. Yeah. Maybe of like, hey, she actually volunteered for her sister. Other siblings haven't volunteered for their siblings, so they just didn't care enough to die for them. But this chick is willing to die to save somebody she loves. Why should we not do the same thing? Well,
and just as importantly, that realizing that they can't simply be dominated by fear. That Katniss, in a moment of personal courage, did something that was against the spirit of what they're doing, which is to make people resent each other. Mm-hmm. And when we get to the Capitol, and for example, when Katniss watches Rue die in the games, that's the moment where she starts to think to herself, how can this be? Mm-hmm. She has that moment. She has that hero's moment where she looks inside and says, how would this, I'm furious. I'm not afraid. I'm not like, I'm not afraid of Snow or the Capitol anymore. I'm in the book. She in her narration, she clearly states, I'm angry. Mm-hmm. This makes me furious. And I think this is where things, you see the seeds start to grow mm-hmm. of something that will become bigger than she is.
And from the love that she shares for humanity, because she cares about people, and especially
she's empathetic. Yeah,
she's empathetic for the smaller human, aka her Rue and her sister.
Yeah.
Love is a big theme in Hunger Games. Love that sparks courage, and another theme of love that comes into the interview stages before they enter the Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. I want to shed light on the other love illumination that happens.
Yes, I would love to talk about my boy, Book Peeta.
Book Peeta.
It's made known very early on that Peeta has always paid attention to Katniss, and Katniss only really knows him as, hey, this is the kid that gave me bread once when I was starving. I guess he's nice.
He's the baker's kid.
Yeah, he's the baker's kid, and he fed me bread once, and his mom cracked him over the head for it. And then Peeta is violently in love with her. And that unfolds throughout their trip on the train and everything, and then through their time training and everything.
And the interview that he says, he's the last one to be interviewed. So basically part of the series is of the series of the tributes is going through training camp, and then you have an interview with Caesar Flickerman, Stanley Tucci.
Perfect casting, no notes.
Casting.
Very Graham Norton-esque in his persona, very charismatic and charming, but very energetic.
Very energetic.
Yeah.
At the interview, PETA declares his love.
Well,
sort of.
Yeah. Caesar asks him, well, if you win, is there a girl at home that you're excited to go home to? Or like the girls have to be crazy over you because again, PETA is incredibly charming. He knows how to turn it on for the cameras, especially in the movie too. It's Josh Hutcherson, who is incredibly charming and charismatic and cute. And he's like, yeah, well, no, there's no like special girl really. And Caesar's like, well, if you win, you go home and there's a girl that you like, she'll have to date you. And he's like, well, no.
Can't help me now
because the only girl that I have eyes for came here with me. And it's such a mic drop, holy shit moment for... It is the turning point in the second act of the book for... Katniss gets so mad.
She's so mad because she thinks that people think she's weak now because someone could love her.
Well, and she's also mad because she is being manipulated by somebody who did not clear this with her in the first place. She thinks that he is just making this shit up so that he can sound good, and it's making her look weak in comparison, where he's just genuinely being like, no, I love this girl, and now I'm gonna have to watch her die. Ooh, sucks.
For sure. So that's kind of where PETA and Katniss kind of go kind of their separate ways in training, and they don't really train together anymore. It's like a point of contention.
Yeah. Well, in the movie, they kind of have a spat and decide. PETA kind of steps back and decides that he wants to train by himself because Katniss gets a really good score, and he's basically like, okay, so she's going to be fine, and I just have to figure out how I'm going to die. In the book, Katniss beats the ever-living shit out of PETA and knocks him into a table, and he cuts up his hands really bad before going into the arena and everything.
This is like the night before the arena.
Yeah, the night before the arena. Beats the shit out of him and is basically like, why the fuck did you do that? What did what? Because he was just being honest, and she can't, because she's so used to being like, are you manipulating me and what are you trying to get out of me, that he was just trying to be earnest and being like, well, I'm gonna die soon, so...
She's not used to people being earnest.
Yeah.
So when people are, she doesn't believe it. It's like you're lied to your entire life and someone tells you a truth that you have no frame of reference.
Yeah. And I think this is... So one of the things that I loved about what they did with this movie visually is it is very 70s dystopic sci-fi. The Peacekeeper wardrobes, for example, really, it harkens to George Lucas's first movie, THX 1138, or Logan's Run, or any of these very sort of muted sort of looking outfits and uniforms that were intentionally drab. And even the camera work is, as actually Julie put it while we were watching, is very lo-fi sci-fi of the idea of a lot of handheld camera work, a lot of very intimate visualizations, because they are trying to get across Katniss's first person narration.
Shaky cam. She's constantly falling down hills and brush
so much.
Yeah, and getting torn apart by thorns and shit, and then landing in a ravine and being like, oh wait, there are people up there. I have to not move for the next 8.5 hours.
Yeah.
In case I get killed. And
it's very handheld. It's very intimate.
In the book, it's so much of I'm trapped here for so long. And I think they translate that into the movie in such a frenetic, shaky cam, we gotta go kind of way.
It's urgent.
Yeah.
So versus, but we also, when we were watching it, kind of noted that the internal camera work inside the arena was more tribute personified versus the actual TV show of the games at the Capitol.
ESPN, baby.
It's Fox News.
On
the one hand, but it's very, even the scenes outside where you see Haymitch being a sponsor.
Yeah.
You see that Dr. Snow talking to Seneca Crane. Dr. Snow, that's not a person. President Snow.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is a Dr. Snow. Yeah.
Really based in humanity, really realistic thing. And then it's the shots of her in the thing where it's we could be watching all of her actions through all of the trees, all the cameras in the trees and the plants and things.
Hidden cams.
Yeah.
Well, and as Collins was talking about when she was writing the first book, part of what inspired it was she was flicking back and forth between footage of the Iraq War and reality television. And I feel like they captured that contrast so nicely with the visual cues in the adaptation.
Oh, for sure. Spot on. And that comes into like the stylized nature of the costumes you were talking about with the peacekeepers, the cornucopia, which is a huge element in both the movie and the book, with this giant cornucopia of plenty, aka weapons, things for survival. And so, I mean, the first 10 minutes of almost every Hunger Games is a bloodbath because everyone zooms in to the cornucopia for supplies. Yeah. Haymitch tells them not to. Yeah. What does he tell them to do instead?
If I recall, to run away.
Run away, get water.
Yeah.
It's like get water and stay alive or something like that.
Yeah. High ground, stay, like get away from everybody, high ground, get water because that's going to be your best friend.
Yeah. Well, and that point where they come up out of the tubes and all of they have that minute where they're all looking at each other. And they do this very well in the movie. Is Katniss is like, she sees a bow and an thing of arrows, and she's like, "Oh, I could totally get there. I can grab that, and I'll grab that, and I'll turn around and run the other way, and like I won't get hit." And it's the thing that gets everybody else in the bloodbath, where it's I can run that 12 feet and then grab that thing and not get killed, and then she like out of the corner of her eye catches Peeta, who's standing on his platform, only looking at her, and he shakes his head no, like you just gotta run away. And it throws her for such a loop that by the time the cannon goes off and they all set free, she like kind of loses their nerve and panics and just kind of turns around and is like, shit, and grabs a backpack, gets hit with a knife in the pack and everything, so she has a knife, and she kind of runs to the woods and everything. It's that moment of her being so mad at Peeta for like, he distracted me and I could have done that, where it's like, no, he saved your life.
Because he persistently says, I'm not going to make it out of this. Yeah. If either one of us is going to make it out of this, it's going to be you. Yeah. So it's interesting. His arc is he got to do the thing he always wanted to do on the biggest stage he could, which was tell Katniss that he loved her. Yeah. And now he's like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna die now, and if I can discourage you from doing this stupid thing and getting out of here. And
in the book, you don't have his point of view. You get inklings of it when they're on the train, and he says like, "Yeah, my mom was like, great. District 12 could have its first victor in how many years?" She wasn't talking about me. Yeah, it's like looking at Katniss, and she like kind of gets mad at him for it, and then she's like, why would your mom say that to you? And it's also like so soul crushing because it's like, yeah, your mom said that to you.
His dad brings her cookies
and promises to take care of Prim for her. And it's like a big part of her deciding like, well, maybe it'll be okay because if I die, Prim will still have food. Yeah. Because it's in that circumstance still a boy with the bread taking care of one of the Everdeen girls. Yeah. And like the parallel will still exist there. But yeah, it's Peeta deciding very early on, I'm gonna die, but she could actually win this, which is I think one of the conversations that he has that Katniss is not privy to in the book. Very early on, that he has with Haymitch, where he's basically like, "I'm gonna die.
I'm not as good as a survivor and fighter as she is. Yeah, so we should try and help her win." And that comes in the rest of the series. It's always Peeta sacrificing himself so Katniss can live. Yeah, because he thinks that she has more to live for than he does. Yeah. He has his family, but they're not close. His mom's an abusive person. They don't need him to survive and take care of himself.
He's like a middle sibling. He's not, having to take care of younger siblings or anything.
And he's not, he also knows the Katniss's backstory with her mom and how after the death of Katniss's father, how emotionally unprepared her mother was for that. And he knows how tenuous that situation is with Primrose, that like it is she is, as much support as she will have, it is still a very tenuous situation.
Mm-hmm. And it's because he's been paying attention.
Watching her.
Yeah. He's been paying attention for years and years and years. Katniss hasn't had the luxury of being able to look around and go like, why is that kid staring at me all the time?
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is fascinating because this was all leading up to, in the games, he pairs up with the careers.
Yeah.
And it makes Katniss fucking hate him.
Oh, crash out. No, she fully is just like, I can't wait to kill him with my bare hands. Which is so funny because she goes from like, well, if anybody's gonna win, I hope that it's PETA so then District 12 could win. And then she finds out that he teams up with the careers and she's like, I'm gonna kill him and I'm gonna enjoy every second of it.
Yeah.
Which is like how the second little chapter part of it ends.
Well, it is the mental gymnastics of the games. It's the mental gymnastics of the entire political system of Pan Am, which is constant distrust, so that no one feels comfortable enough to make healthy decisions at any given point in time.
There's so many rules. You can't trust your neighbor. And if you can't trust your neighbor, you can't ally with your neighbor against someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's very true even in the arena.
Yeah. And it's also the very District 12 thing of, I'm going to take you at your word. He, for the first half of the book, is, I'm in love with you and I don't care what happens. I know I'm going to die. And then he aligns with the careers because he's that level of manipulation he's used to go, hey, no, I'll help you find her because we'll all find her and then she can help us, kind of thing. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to kill her anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like they'll help her, but the only way they'd be able to find her is with him.
With him, yeah. He's the lover boy. He'll find her. It'll be fine. And
she hears that too. She's in a tree.
Yeah. And so she hears all of this and is like, oh, he's just a liar. He was just manipulating me the whole time. Everything he ever said to me, any inkling that I ever got, like, is he being for real about, giving a shit about me? He was playing me the whole time. I'm going to kill him with my bare hands. Where in actuality, it's Peeta just being like, shit, these guys are going to kill me. I know where Katniss is, I think.
I can help you find her, but also maybe distract you from finding her.
But also, if we find her, maybe she can kill you all because I believe in her that much because I am that down bad.
Yeah.
Okay, he loves her.
He loves her.
So we get to the point where they actually do find her, right? Because the game makers are able to manipulate the arena and send fireballs careening at Katniss.
Sorry. Yeah.
And she gets burned. She's in a river, trying to staunch her wounds, and they find her and they go.
Yeah.
And they basically scare her up a tree. There's a whole sequence in which she's like, These career motherfuckers don't know how to climb trees. They've never climbed a tree in their life.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
I'm really good at climbing trees.
Yeah.
And she's tiny and petite and can scale them easily so she can get high enough up that any of the careers are heavy enough that they're going to break all the branches all the way down so they can't reach her. So she's basically perched on top of a tree, tied to it with a rope, half bleeding out of her burns. And watching a guy she trusted betray her 300 feet down.
It pays to be malnourished. You're thinner. You can go up higher in a tree. You're tiny. And another person who's also tiny and good at climbing trees is Rue.
Yeah.
So they're basically like, we'll just wait her out. She has to come down sometime. She has to eat. She has to do whatever.
Yeah.
And so they go to bed. And at night, she sees Rue in an adjacent tree.
Yeah. Through the way that they describe it in the book is like she catches just these big eyes staring at her through the leaves. And she's like, what is that? And she thought it was an animal. And then she kind of like moves enough that she's like, oh my God, that's Rue.
Yeah.
How is she still alive?
Yeah.
And then she realizes that she can jump from like
tree to tree.
Yeah, treetop to treetop. As a little spider monkey, hops from tree to tree and is basically unheard, can't be seen. And she finds Katniss. She tracks her down and is basically like connects with her there and then is like, hey, just so you know, there's a giant bee's nest like 12 feet above your head right now.
Yeah. The tracker jackers.
The tracker jackers.
tracker jackers, which are another mutation.
Another weapon of war, yeah.
And there's a hive right above her.
Yeah.
Or below her, above her.
It's above her.
Yeah.
She has to climb up and saw the
little tree branches. And in the book they draw this out a lot more. They draw the whole Hunger Games out a lot more.
Larger expanse of time.
Everything that takes 2 minutes in the movie takes 12 hours in the book.
Yeah.
So all the careers plus PETA are having a fire down on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And Rue's like, hey, saw that little thing. So she goes up to start sawing it and drops the tracker jacker nest.
Yeah, she starts it, realizes that if she is able to use, so I think this is an interesting point to discuss just how much money and resource that the Capitol spent to build the arena, because they project at the end of each night on the dome of this arena, force field or whatever it is, the names and faces of everyone who died, and then they play the anthem over this. And so she uses the anthem that they're playing as cover to start sawing it, but she can't quite get there by the time the anthem has finished.
Yeah.
And this is one of those points where, like, how much time and energy the Capitol put into building this thing that you could have used to solve any social problem. Like
they could have solved hunger in all of the districts immediately.
It's the idea that this could be a utopia. Like that is the gulf that exists between the Capitol and the districts, is that Jesus Christ,
so much money into it.
Miraculous levels of godlike levels of power that they have.
Yeah. And she sends the tracker jackers down on PETA and the careers early in the morning, the next morning, by sawing through the rest of that tree branch, getting stung a couple of times herself, and then basically drops the tracker jackers on Glimmer and Kato and Marvel and Clove. PETA is on the other side of the tree, so he manages to get away. Glimmer takes
stung.
Yeah, he gets stung. Yeah, stung a couple times. They all get stung a couple times, except for Glimmer, who takes the brunt of it, and basically turns into a bag of goo.
Yeah.
And they describe it as you're equally getting these like massive pustule-sized like sting wounds on yourself, but also starting to hallucinate wildly. And Katniss gets enough of them that she is starting to hallucinate.
She's tripping balls.
Yeah, she's tripping balls. She's not doing great. She gets stung like 3 or 4 times, and they're like, yeah, that's the most that you could get stung and still like live.
Yeah. Which they fisheye in the movie a lot, and they have those funny sort of editing techniques and visuals that are fun.
I always thought when I first saw this movie, I was like, this is trippy.
Yeah.
And this is ridiculous because Caesar Flickerman
shows up, and you know what? Thank God, because I love I'll see Stanley Tucci anywhere, anytime.
It's like it's a very good adaptation of like, she's tripping balls in the woods, also bleeding out still. And then also like in so much pain from these massive like baseball-sized bee stings that she's like on borderline of passing out and dying. Yeah.
Well, it's a fun thing where Flickerman is describing the effects of the tracker jackers. And throughout the games, they are commentating in a way that they don't in the movie. Or they are, but we don't see it in the book because it's all very first person. And it's a fun way to basically say, to sort of bring her visualization of their narration into play. At
this point, her narration becomes the narration that Stanley Tucci is doing.
Yeah, it's very fun.
With her counterpart, with his counterpart host.
Yeah. Claudius Temple Smith. Something complicated and ridiculous.
Who is a character in the book?
Claudius Temple Smith, played by Toby Jones.
Yeah. And she has enough wherewithal to get the arrows and bow and arrows from Glimmer's.
What's left of her.
In the book, it is described in a way that is so disgusting that I was sitting at work and just grimacing at my laptop the entire time because, oh my God, the movie is not much better.
No, the movie is more rigor mortis versus book is more melty mortis, and
Yeah.
it's not great.
Bag of pus is how it's described in the book, and that it's a multi-page thing describing trying to get these weapons off of this girl who used to be
Yeah.
it's maybe the most horrifying part of it, just because it's so body horror and it's so prolonged in the book that you're just like, just please stop.
But she has her weapon of choice, finally.
Yeah, well, it's the desperation of she has to get this thing off of her, and it's so horrifying.
And so she stumbles away into the woods. PETA actually comes and warns her that the careers are coming. So because she's frozen. She's tripping balls. She's frozen. PETA comes and...
She trips balls in the woods for a while, and then the careers make it down to the water and are able to, like, dunk themselves and stave off enough of the tracker jacker stings that they turn around and they're basically like, let's go kill that girl.
Yeah.
And then PETA edges them out and is basically like, you gotta go.
Yeah.
Run. And he's like, why aren't you running? You need to run. And then not realizing that she is, again, tripping balls.
Yeah.
So she finally makes it away, and she collapses, passes out. In both iterations, she's down for the count.
Yeah.
And who comes to her rescue?
Little Rue.
Yeah.
With her poultice for her wounds.
Yes, and in the book, it's a lot slower, and it's Rue kind of being like, I've kept you alive to this point.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's basically like, yeah, I slapped these leaves on your wounds and you're fine.
You change your leaves twice.
Yeah, I changed
They, they do, I'll give them this much, they do take the moment to indicate passage of time, because they say it's been a couple of days.
Couple of days.
Yeah.
You've been out a couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she tells her the tributes who have died.
She catches her up on like 2 or 3 days of her being out.
Being out.
Yeah.
So then they decide to form an alliance. Katniss hunts, gets her some food. She has a greaseling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She catches,
yeah.
and cooks, and she offers Rue a whole leg, and she's like,
they make it very apparent that, like, in the book especially, that she knows what plants and things that she can eat, but she has not had protein. She has not had game in how long?
She's done hunt.
A week.
She's from agriculture.
A week at this point, so she's basically starving. And so Katniss gives her essentially an entire cooked bird.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, here, and gives her the other leg too, because she's like, yeah, this kid is starving.
It's the saddest little detail in the book for Rue, which is that they live in an agricultural district and produce food. They are the food basket for the capital, but are not allowed to eat the food.
Yeah.
And can be punished, in fact, if they do.
And there, the sweet scenes where she's feeding her like she would feed Prim. It's very much that I'm going to hunt and I'm going to feed this little girl who's relying on me for, to move on and everything. But she's also incredibly smart and knows how to find all of these berries and gather and she's also doing her part to keep them both alive, but she's also keeping Katniss sane in a way. She's a lot, because she is so young, she's a little bit more shielded from the horrors of it. You don't have the time to fully lose your marbles.
Oh, for sure.
When you're 12 and up in a tree.
That's true. She's definitely seen somebody die at this point, but like, it's not the same.
It's still horrifying, but your brain is a little bit more protected from the elements, let's say.
So they form an alliance. They decide what they're going to do is team up and try and get the resources away from the careers who piled it up by the lake.
And blow it up, yeah.
Rue is great at intel. She knows exactly where everyone is.
Yeah.
In both the movie and the book. She's like, Thrush is in the tall grass behind the cornucopia. The careers have all their shit by the lake. Foxface is on that side of the arena. Like, she's just such a little tiny spy.
Yeah, she's been in the treetops the whole time, so she can pinpoint where everybody is. And it's just been like, well, here's the map.
Yep.
And Katniss is like, oh, I can use that.
Uh-huh.
Tell me more. And so, yeah, there's a good portion of the book where Rue is just talking. Where she's just like, yeah, and then he's over here, and they're doing this, and this is everything that I know. And then Katniss is fully formulating, like, war plans.
Oh, yeah. So I'm just giving you this information. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. I'm just 12.
I'm teeny tiny.
Well, but it really is, they're good, because they are creating the kind of capacity that, like, nations have to work for years to get to, where they're like, okay, these are the departments that we have. We have intelligence, and then we have executing on that intelligence.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They do execute on the intelligence they do go to they have a plan where they're going to light distraction fires. Rue's going to light the distraction fires, and Katniss is going to...
Yeah, light the fires, get up in the trees, flit over the next one.
Mm-hmm. And destroy the resources of the careers, because the careers, as we discussed, have trained in a official capacity for the games, but don't know how to survive in the wild.
Yeah.
So without the resources given to them at the cornucopia, they'd be fucked.
Yeah.
They can't hunt, they can't gather, there's nothing.
They're great killers, but not...
They are trained to kill people.
Well, they're breathtaking machines, but the problem with those kinds of machines is that they need very specific care, and these machines aren't getting that care.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So she gets to the pile. She sees Foxface, who is another one of the tributes, I think from 8.
6 or 8.
6. One of the middle ones.
Yeah.
It's not like a lower.
Yeah, she calls her Foxface because she can't quite remember her name, but she's just this like sly little, able to jump through. She weasels her way through things.
Fast and cunning is sort of her thing.
Fast and cunning. Fun fact, I mentioned this during reviewing. I sent an audition tape for
A little Tinseltown trivia here at the...
and FYI, I did not get the role. I was not Foxface. And, it's fine.
I could not submit for any of those because I was not old enough.
I actually, it's embarrassing. I got tapped for Gale, but then I was doing a play.
Don't listen to him.
I was doing a play in New England. It was around Boston, so I had to back out. But look, they got a Hemsworth. I get it. This is how Hollywood works.
Fine, we're fine. Anyway, so she's at the cornucopia pile of resources, and she sees Foxface doing a little jumping around, like she knows where to jump.
Yeah, she's got this like ballerina style. She's on her tiptoes, very precisely jumping a couple 100 feet ahead of herself.
She's from 5.
Yeah.
She's from 5 because the boy that is guarding the pile is also from 5. He's the one that set the mines.
Yeah, that's right.
So the mine, like the nuclear whatever bomb people are from District 5.
Yeah.
And so those are underneath the tubes that they come out of.
Yeah.
At the start of it. And so the boy from District 5 allied with the careers be like, hey, I'll get these bombs out of these tubes for you to guard your food. And since she's also from 5, she knows what the
layout, how he's gonna lay them out to keep her out of there. So she has this very specific like dance she does through them. And Katniss is like, well, I could recreate that, or I'm gonna get my leg blown off. So I would rather just not.
And Foxface only takes as little as she can to survive and not be noticed.
Yeah.
Which is important down the line. But Katniss, again, doesn't want to blow her freaking leg off. So she shoots a bag of apples off the top with an arrow, and one apple, boop, 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 tumbles, blows all their shit up. Yeah. So now they're like, fuck. But then she hears Rue crying out.
She gets absolutely blown the fuck up. She gets wrecked. She can't hear. She's blown up one of her eardrums. Yeah. She's laying kind of in the underbrush in the woods, just like, haha, I've destroyed all of your food. So I don't care if I die right now. Like, I won. Screw you guys. And then she kind of gets up and is meandering through the woods in the book and can half hear out of one ear. And that's when she starts hearing screaming. And it's Rue in the woods just screaming for help. And so she just starts running. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause she's her ally. She has to go protect her ally. And unfortunately, Rue's in a net.
Yeah.
From, I'm assuming, Marvel. Yeah, because
some snare or something they have set up.
She's caught. She's in a human trap, and she gets the net off of Rue, and as she's standing Rue up, and a spear comes and gets Rue right in the stomach.
And right in the chest.
Right in the chest, and Nepo baby boy Marvel.
Our boy, Jack Quaid.
Yeah, he just full on. She turns and just shoots him right in the chest.
Oh, yeah. Hits, immediately turns, no thought, shoots him with an arrow right in the chest. He's down, turns back around. Rue has a 6-foot long spear sticking out of her chest. and is just dying.
Yeah.
I cry every time I see that part. I didn't cry when I watched it with you guys because I need to be strong. Like,
well, I might have cried if you'd started crying, and then where would we be?
We'd just be still crying.
Yeah.
Even now, but yeah. So it's like her little sister has died. Katniss is witnessing.
That is in my notes. I have this written down as the crash out point where Rue is dying in her arms, basically, and she asks Katniss to sing me a song, sing me, because we are so close as districts, you'll know some song that will bring me some solace. I know I'm dying. Sing to me. And she goes, okay, and pulls out, whatever song she can think of at that time. And as it's being broadcast to, the entirety of Pan Am, sings to this little girl as she slowly bleeds to death, and then has a moment where she's just dead and she's just looking at her, and that's the moment that she's just like, you know what? No, I'm mad.
Yeah.
And she kind of crashes out, loses her mind a little bit. She decorates Rue and all the flowers. In the book, they're the little yellow flowers. It's the Rue. It's the the yellow flowers that she gets covered in. In the movie, it's a lot more deliberate. She has like a little bouquet covering the wound on her chest and everything, and she knows this is being broadcast, but she's not doing it to be like, oh, it's this message. She's just like, this is a version of my little sister that got murdered.
And she's singing the song that she would have sung to Primrose back home in District 12. And I think this is one of the things that I really, really respected about the movie. They do a good job when books employ musical devices. It can be hard to translate them to film, and I think they do a really spectacular job translating. I think the three elements are the song that she sings to Prim and then eventually to Rue. The anthem of Pan Am is very imposing and very stately and very like self-important and self-righteous, and then finally the 4-note tone that the Mockingjay sings is very like they do an exceptional job nailing all of those elements in a way that I suspect people, and I think after I'd seen the movie when it came out, and so I was kind of spoiled in that respect, but I could imagine someone having read the book and having expectations of the movie would have been pretty satisfied with those notes. And it's a subtle thing, but it's important, because if you attempt it and it feels rushed or dishonest, then something doesn't jive.
It doesn't.
It's Rue doing the Disney princess like
yeah,
and then Katniss doing the in a minor whistle in the opposite direction kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a call and response that they do really well in the movie. And yeah, that's that point where I think that Katniss turns from being like, I just have to stay alive to get home to Prim to fuck these people.
Fuck these.
Yeah.
Fuck this noise.
Yeah.
And they bring back the 3-finger salute, like the middle 3 fingers to the mouth and to lift up, and that's what people in the District 12 did for her when she volunteered. But she did it for Rue as, I think, like a symbol that she's part of my family district. Like I'm giving her the respect and farewell.
It's something that's done in the outer districts that
not everywhere, not the career.
Not everybody's going to know what that means.
Yeah.
But like 11, 12 would probably, like 11 might know, 12 knows.
Yeah.
Hey, I gave a shit about this kid. She decorates her with flowers. She leaves her in that spot to be picked up by the big helicopter guys. And then takes off into the woods and fully crashes out.
Oh yeah.
This is the point where I think you see Katniss for she is exactly like Haymitch, in which she is mad.
She's mad, but doesn't know what to do about it yet.
Yeah. Pissed and does not have a capacity to put it into. It's the thing where she's in the training thing and she's like, I'm being upstaged by a dead pig. Loses her marbles.
Yeah.
And it's like, screw this, and then shoots the apple into the pig's mouth, and that's what makes them all pay attention to her. And she's like, did I just kill my entire family?
Yeah.
Oh God. She's not, it's how hard she crashes out for the people that she loves, that she's not aware of the circumstances. And it's, I did all of this for Rue, and now she's dead, and I don't know what to do, and so I'm just sitting in the woods and screaming.
Yeah.
She's aimless.
Yeah.
And after she just crashed out a little bit, in the movie she just stand up and she starts like walking a little bit, but it's still like, I don't know what I'm on a path, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing.
There's a good chunk of the book where she's just losing her mind.
She's losing her mind. In the movie they kind of they speed that up a little bit, and they announce that there could be 2 victors if both are from the same district. And she does some mental math and realizes PETA has not been on the sky yet.
Yeah.
So they could both go home. And so now she has a purpose again. And I think that, and they made it more clear in the movie that Haymitch had more of a role.
Well, that's what I think that's interesting, because Collins makes those choices where she's like, I want more for Haymitch to do visually, and I want to see more of those machinations behind the scenes. So there are scenes where Haymitch goes to Crane and says, hey, look, it's good TV. Like, this is going to look good. You have an audience, so just connect with your audience.
It's him pitching. It's him pitching him on, hey, these 2 love each other, and one of them's still alive in a ditch somewhere. I don't know. So maybe we can make this happen. Yeah, it's selling that idea,
which then runs up to Snow.
I do think that is a Suzanne Collins in the screenplay being like, let's give a little bit more love to Haymitch here.
Well, and I think when you get that kind of casting, Woody Harrelson, seems like he's made for that.
Oh yeah.
The
hair, but perfect.
The only note I have is they should have rewritten it to make him a pothead like Woody Harrelson actually is.
My only note is that wig.
It's unbelievable.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, wigs are not the star of the show in most of these youth.
I'm willing to forgive them.
So we have 2 victor options now.
Yeah.
But PETA is, again, maybe die in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah, in the book they make it very clear Cato slashed him up good whenever he was trying to warn Katniss away from, hey, they're going to come kill you now after she's, high as hell on Tracker Jacker venom and taking off into the woods. Cato gets a good slice out of his leg. My dude has been bleeding out in the woods somewhere for a good, 4 to 7 days.
Couple of days.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
He's not doing well.
But
because he's shown up on the big thing, Katniss knows he's alive.
Yeah.
In the book, I like it a lot better because they make that announcement. She thinks for about 0.2 seconds and then just screams, PETA! At the top of her lungs, and then covers her mouth like, oh, crap. Yeah. People are going to hear me. I got to go.
Yeah. And
kind of just takes off into the woods. Whereas in the movie, it's a lot more measured. Like, she whispers it to herself and, starts thinking about, where should I go? In the book, it's much more, it's her showing her ass. She cares about the guy.
Yeah.
She wants to go find him.
She heads towards where Bruce said he had been.
Yeah.
Which is not... I think she's, by the river is what she said.
Yeah.
And so she heads towards the river.
She figures out, he can't be that far from the water, but because he needs water to survive. But
know exactly where, and
she had some, basic area of where he was and everything.
His talent for camels.
Okay, so look, I gotta say, I forgot about this completely the first time I saw it. This is maybe the hardest I'd ever laughed watching a movie in a moment where I don't think I was intended to. So it's established in the book that because he's grew up in a bakery and is very talented, he's a very talented artist and he's very good at cake decoration and those little details. And they even establish in the movie that he's good at that because he demonstrates by performing that skill in his arm, and he camouflages it to look like a tree, and it looks great.
In the movie, he demonstrates that by creating perfect wood mark on his arm.
So it's not just that he's covered in mud and buried into a riverbank. It's that
Look.
he has designed himself somehow to look like he is part of a felled tree.
The exact approximation of some wood and a rock, and
The rock gets
When his eyes.
with the moss around his jawline.
How do you put how do you have the time for moss? You're bleeding to death.
I'm a fan. We discussed it. I'm a fan of the show Face Off, which was essentially a movie makeup reality show, and this looked like something that one of those contestants would do, and be like, if you win, you get to put one thing in a movie, and it looks like somebody won and got to put it in the Hunger Games.
They won their episode challenge. She walks by.
It's a camouflage challenge.
Yeah, she walks by and he grabs her leg because he's on the ground again. His face is a rock.
Yeah,
And she grabs him like, yeah, and then like they go on their merry way to get him all settled and whatnot. They find a cave.
yeah. In the book, he's just caked in mud and kind of has found a hole to settle himself in.
Like camouflage, like you do.
Camouflage to be like, well, I'm covered in mud, and that's probably why he's so sick, is because he's bleeding to death in a hole filled with mud. But
pretty fair. Let's just establish now his wound in the book is a lot more gruesome than the movie, and I'm glad they did it that way because what they described in the book.
Well, and he has sepsis. I mean, he has blood poisoning.
My guy is dying.
He's dying, and so they're in a cave, and that's when we really start to discover that Katniss is playing the love game. Well, Peeta just is in love.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh well, if I kiss him, I get broth or something.
Yeah.
If I do more, or I really add, what else can we get?
It's the comparison in the book is it's Katniss going, I got this thing of broth because I gave him like a half earnest kiss on the cheek, half lips.
Yeah.
And in her head, it's Haymitch going, you call that a kiss?
Yeah.
And then in the movie, it is very literally him going, you call that a kiss, sweetheart?
In a little note.
Yeah, in the little written note. And she's like, you know what? Fine.
And that's when she says, let's have some fun. This beat is sick.
I thought you said this Peeta's sick.
No, that actually works quite well.
This Peeta's sick.
This Peeta's sick.
And so he's sick, he's dying, we know this. We don't know what to do because she's not a healer like her mom or her sister, so what are we going to do? They offer a feast. And the feast is, we have shit you need, come to the cornucopia, basically to draw people in to get killed.
Yeah.
And she goes to get the medicine for Peeta.
Yeah, well, in previous Hunger Games and previous feasts, she makes a point of saying like, oh, it's this massive thing with all this food and all these supplies and everything you can ever want. And this is very much, we have one thing that each of you needs. Mm-hmm. Come get it.
I love the comparison. In the movie, it's not as comical, but in the book, it's a teeny tiny little backpack.
Yeah.
Little pack, yeah.
It's just a teeny tiny little pack. And in the book, it's more just pills to help stave off fever and get him to live. In the movie, it's like the magic burn cream, but the magic healing cream.
Yeah.
And so she goes to the cornucopia, basically either waits till he's asleep or tricks him and whatever.
In the book, she drugs him and then takes off into the woods.
With the morph. What's sleep syrup. Sleep syrup.
Yeah.
Where it's something that her mom used as a last ditch to be like, look, I don't know if you're gonna make it, so just go to sleep. Like
pass out from the pain.
Yeah.
Because she knows he won't let her go alone otherwise.
Yeah. So she gets to the cornucopia, and there's other people at the cornucopia, including Clove.
Yeah.
District 1.
The orphan herself, Elizabeth Vernon, who actually looks like the age of her character in Orphan in this.
She's great. She's great. And so she gets in. So Clove is really talented with knives, and she goes and she basically corners Katniss, and she's about to kill Katniss, but she pulls a full-on Joker. And is like,
oh yeah, let's put a smile.
I'm going to start with your mouth, and then is going to carve some sweet Joker lines into her face.
Torture you instead of just getting this over with.
In the book, I think she gets away with like a little bit of it before
she cuts her lip. I think there's
our boy Thresh.
Yeah,
Rue's counterpart from 11.
Rue's counterpart from 11. They have this whole dialogue, Clove and Katniss, where basically she says like, yeah, we killed your little friend. You know, we killed that little girl. Whatever. Ha ha ha. She's taunting her.
Mm-hmm.
Thresh overhears this, comes up, and is basically like, what did you say about that little girl?
Mm-hmm.
Because while he has been distancing himself from her, that's his district partner.
Mm-hmm.
So he loses it a little bit.
District partner, and he knows that she's a 12-year-old little girl.
Yeah.
You know, like, he has a heart, too.
Yeah.
And you kill that little girl, and...
You kill that little girl? Yeah.
And smack.
In the book, smacks her over the head with a
So
rock
much more brutal.
and dents her head in
No
a way
blood,
that's so
just
visceral.
dents her skull.
Suzanne Collins, what the hell, man?
Actually, it's physically impossible to just dent without breaking.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, Suzanne, medically impossible. But in the movie, he breaks her neck on the cornucopia.
You blew it.
Basically snaps her neck. Yeah, snacks her neck. And it looks at Katniss and is basically like,
For real.
this is for real.
Which is still
This
brutal.
is the one time
Yeah,
12, and then runs into the woods.
Yeah.
And I love, if anybody would have won besides Katniss and spoiler alert, Peeta, I would have wanted Thresh to win. He's
Yeah. There's a good through line there where she's like, if anybody wins, then it's not me or it's not Peeta, because she wavers back and forth on whether or not she wants to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, Thresh would be good because he could go home to 11 and talk about Rue.
Yeah.
So that's a good through line too, where she's like, well, at least he's still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's her last. If it's not me or Peeta, it's Thresh.
And so we get the medicine for Peeta's leg, and it's still disgusting, but it's manageable at this point.
He can walk
He
again.
can walk again, although in the book more so it's still infected, still bad.
He can still hobble.
At one point, she has to fashion support with an arrow.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear, both of them, he's going to lose that leg.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost gone.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she fashions a splint for his leg out of one of her arrows so that he can hobble his way down to the cornucopia.
They're basically shuttling everybody back to the cornucopia, and it's a little bit more direct in the movie where they're kind of walking like, well, we can't stay here forever.
Mhm.
They're walking around, they hear barking and growls, and you hear Thresh die, you hear Thresh scream out because another mutation has come into the arena from the game makers. And it's more over in the movie where they have that chick who's too happy to send these animals into
Too thrilled to make these weird human-faced dogs.
these mutations, giant dog things, to kill the rest of the tributes apart from one. And in the book, they are mirrored off of the tributes that have already died. And way more clear, like their eyes look like...
In the book,
Which would be very hard to shoot.
Very into here's what each of these mutts looks like, and then we'll tell you at the very end of us describing them how they are all modeled after the tributes who have died.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne, I hate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the movie, it's very much just there are these kind of human-faced dogs who are gonna kill you.
Because it's hard to convey that in a way that's clear without also seeming outlandish. Whereas with a novel, the reader can produce that image in their head, and you're like, oh, well, that's terrifying.
Of it describing what each one of them looks like before Katniss goes, oh my god, these are all of the other tributes. Yeah.
For the first time I read it when I was younger, I read that and I was like, oh my god, they have like flowing blonde hair and flowing red hair, and like they are like, it's just like dogs.
Dog with a weave.
They're just like the color of the hair, and the color of the fur. But my imagination went wild. I'm like,
similar color eyes and like a similar.
Elizabeth
face.
Foreman's dented head is attached to a dog's body.
It's like what's the face monster from Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Oh yeah.
That's what I pictured when I first read this when I was 14. But no, in the movie it's just giant dogs, and they chase Peeta and Katniss to the cornucopia where Cato is on top of the cornucopia, basically trying to get away.
Yeah.
And so a fight with the last 3 remaining tributes ensues, and Cato gets Peeta in a headlock.
Yeah.
And in the book, it's more like, here's a bloody X to shoot his hand.
Yeah. Well, he very much is covered in blood because he's actively dying.
Yep.
And basically draws an X on his forearm to be like, and here is where you should shoot him. Katniss, it's okay. Just do it right here. Doing the PETA thing of I'm going to say one thing and then tell you what to do with the other hand.
Yeah. It works better. He does shoot the arm, and Cato gets pushed off by PETA into the mutts, but in the book, he's wearing armor.
Yeah.
That prevents him from dying for a very long time.
It takes hours.
Several hours to the point where it's PETA and Katniss sitting on top of the cornucopia, and he looks at Katniss and is like, can you see him? Can you shoot him?
Yeah.
And it's because they've been listening to this kid get ripped apart for 12 hours, and they're just so over it. They're so mentally, drained by this experience that they're just like, we have to put him out of his misery. I don't care about this kid. Like, this kid hated our guts the entire time we were in here, but I don't want to have to listen to this for one more second. Yeah.
Even he doesn't deserve that. Again, the first read I read, because I read this too quickly, because I don't, if you read too fast, you don't actually digest what is on the page. You just, hey, I read it. When the screaming for hours happened, I'm like, oh, so they're just playing solitaire on top of the cornucopia. Like, okay, is he like done yet?
Yeah.
You read it as like a middle schooler, and you're like, oh, well, that's sad. And then you read it now, and you're like, oh, I had to listen to this young kid die for 12 hours.
Well, and you get so absorbed in that it's so horrifying that it time passes both incredibly slowly, but then once it's over, you can't believe it's been hours that this has been going on, because you're so absorbed in the horror of what it is that you're witnessing.
Yeah.
So she does shoot Cato, puts him out of his misery, and that leaves the last two victors, who happen to be from the same district, as the victors.
Yeah. Per
the previous rule. However, however, it is rescinded almost immediately.
Claudius Templesmith tunes in again.
Fucking Claudius Templesmith.
Yeah.
Which I like how they brought Claudius in as the second commentator, but he's not the announcer.
Yeah.
It's Seneca Crane.
Yeah.
As the announcer, because then they just use his sound bites in the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Like, you both have to kill each other, or you have to fight now between the two of you.
Yeah.
And then they have these poison berries, which we skipped over, that Foxface snuck from their camp.
Yeah.
Yes.
And killed her. Basically, she died.
It's Peeta's only kill, because he mistakenly picked those berries while they were foraging.
Poisonous berries.
Yeah.
And then Foxface steals from their bag of, like, goodies. In the book, it's like some berries and some cheese.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's just some berries. And then she dies immediately, and Peeta's like, what did I do?
Yeah.
It's Nightlock, PETA. Jeez.
Yeah.
And so they still have the Nightlock berries, and so they pull the berries out, and we're like, well, I'm not going to kill you. You're not going to kill me. Let's just kill ourselves.
Yeah.
And they'll have no victor, but they need to have a victor. Aha.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
You guys can both live.
Yeah. Psych.
Yeah. Seneca loses his mind. He's like, wait, no. It's for both of you. Yay.
And then Seneca Crane has to eat berries.
Yeah.
And die.
Yeah.
Murdered.
So that's the end of the actual Hunger Games itself. And we moved past the games, and we're into post games, but what they did with the berries was an act of rebellion. Namely, it was Katniss's act of rebellion, because she suggested it, right?
Yeah.
So then that leads into the rest of the series. And yeah. I don't know what else to say about the first.
Yeah. The end of the first book being PETA being like, hey, so we're going to go back to 12 now, and maybe we'll make a real go at this. And Katniss being like, what are you talking about?
I was just saying.
I was just...
Say psych.
And him being like, oh shit, no, you were actively pretending to be in love with me, where I'm actively in love with you. And that's when she realizes, like, oh, he was in love with her the whole time.
Yeah.
And none of that was acting. And that's when he's like, you know what? Fair. Bye.
Yeah.
And never talks to her after that for a long time.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing if I was in his shoes.
Very, very fair.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure.
Well, it's the ultimate, oh, I misunderstood what we were doing.
Yeah.
And because and that sets up the dynamic of Gale and PETA throughout the whole series, with the love triangle and everything, and if she really loves PETA or not, and blah, 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 blah. But turns out he did lose his leg.
Yeah.
He lost the leg, and he has an animatronic leg, and they repair her eardrum.
Yeah.
So they're fully whole, and they return to District 12. And they have about 6 months before the victory tour.
Yeah.
Which is when they go to all the other districts, and that's in the next books or so.
Catching Fire.
I think they really do use the last sequences of the movie to set up the franchise. And I think this is the first book that we've done that was part of what was really a planned series.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they made choices that were designed to sort of amp up the tension and the stakes. And one of the biggest omissions from the book is that after Katniss showed grace and empathy to Rue, her district sends her bread to eat as a token, as a gesture. Rue's district sends her a bread to eat as a gesture of thanks. And it's meant to be a real signal of compassion and sort of unity among the districts. All of a sudden, this hasn't happened in a long time. In the movie, they set it up as Rue's death sparks a revolt in her district. It sparks an uprising in her district.
Well, Rue's death and then the honoring of her death by somebody not from their district
creates a new sense of tension between them and the peacekeepers who are guarding them. And you can really tell that Lionsgate knows what they have. They are quite aware of how popular this thing is. At this point, Lionsgate hadn't made profit of anything in some time. And so they're like vacuuming resources and money into different movies to fund this thing.
Two books into this franchise, maybe 3. They
had all been written. It's done. The books are out there. They are doing this.
This wasn't like, what's another series that they had one movie but it didn't get greenlit for the rest of them? I'm pretty sure this Catching Fire was greenlit almost immediately.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like this is a question, if this one is successful, we'll keep going. As a spec first series.
It was very much building out a trilogy from the jump.
Well, they knew what they had, and they paid Susan Collins $200K just to option the novel. They were knocking down her door trying to get this thing made because they realized how popular it was. It's like the second most popular series of YA novels outside of Harry Potter. I think is still number 1. But I think that you can tell that they are setting up the structure of a franchise with this movie. Now, obviously, if it bombed, they would have had to say, well, never mind. But they are.
One series did. It was recent. Another series tried to get off the ground and it bombed. The Artemis Fowl movies.
Yes, absolutely.
Aragon
was trapped.
They just couldn't replicate it because Susan Collins was genuinely a gifted author who understood the dynamics of a good story.
There's a level of YA novel that can never get off the ground in the first movie because it's just too expensive.
Yeah.
You have dragons, you have magic, you have all of this stuff, and then it's
high tech, special effects.
Where The Hunger Games is very much, this is a story about people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of high tech and there's a lot of that, but it is very much how people react to one another.
It's much more measured.
Yeah.
And also you can't argue with the popularity relative to a lot of those other series. Just a meteoric impact on its readership immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were like, we know exactly what we have, so we're going to set this up. We're going to make Snow the clear antagonist to Everdeen. We're gonna set this up from the jump. Here's the blueprint for at least a trilogy and what would become 4 movies.
Yeah.
Now 5, I guess.
Yeah.
5, soon to be 6.
Yeah.
And then Suzanne Collins is going to write the Finnick Hunger Games, so then 7, and then I'm going to read all of them. I don't care.
So the Hamish one is on my book list right now. It's on my wait list for
that's what I'm listening to next week while I work.
So it's important to note that because this had such success as a book and as a series, our classic question is, will it be adapted again? Is it worth a readaptation? When? And a movie or a TV show?
So I had a very specific thought as I was watching this movie. And it, on the one hand, it feels like a cursed idea, but you could develop an unbelievable video game with some incredible mechanics where like the first half of the game is essentially a social sim where you have to build relationships in the capital and impress certain people and create relationships between sponsors. And then there's a second portion of the game where you go into the arena and you have to trust that you built those relationships while you're playing to an audience as well as trying to survive. This would be, in my opinion, an unbelievable video game. However, the subject matter would make it a terrifying, perhaps cursed thing to play. So, I don't know.
Unless all the deaths are made by computers.
Yes, yeah.
Not you.
Yeah, maybe.
Other kids.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. I don't think that they should readapt it for several years. I think it should be revisited as an HBO series.
Sure, yeah.
A la The Last of Us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very similar in vibe, and we could get there with the tone and everything. And really flesh out some of the parts of the book that got left out of the original movie series. Do it. Some young, new actors, some no-name actors. I do think all of the casting in the first movie is perfect.
Yeah.
No notes. I do think they did what they had to do, but if we did something that was just totally off the rails, some new no-name actors for some of the younger characters, and really built a thing off of that, I think that they could have another Game of Thrones level thing on their hands. Just being able to invest in some of the deeper character interaction there. I don't think they should remake the movies. I think the movies are good how they are. If anybody was going to, dive back into it, I know that they're going to make 8 million versions of everything that Suzanne Collins ever makes.
Yeah.
But I would sell my soul for a good
TV show.
12 episode run.
Yeah. Well, I'll
12
say.
episodes, 12 discs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am on the same boat with the TV show in 7+ years. Yeah.
Yeah. Revisit it then, and then by then the songbirds and
snakes.
Songbirds and snakes, and the Haymitch version, and then hopefully the Finnick Hunger Games. Suzanne, if you're listening.
Yeah.
We'll all be out by then, and those will be adapted into movies, and then we can revisit this in a way that's a little bit more gets into the meat of it.
Well, I
think it deserves it.
Well, I would argue that this is the first time where this is also presented a different kind of adaptation, a sort of cultural adaptation. So the salute, the three-fingered salute, became a genuine, legitimate signal of protest against Asian military regimes, particularly in Myanmar, where a group of youth protesters commonly used this three-fingered salute in their demonstrations against the military dictatorship. And I think that's, if you're Susan Collins, I think that's kind of an extraordinary thing to see in your lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
I think to shape discourse around legitimate fear of authority the way Orwell might have, in a very practical, immediate way, is its own kind of adaptation that we haven't seen yet.
Sure. I mean, we kind of saw it a little bit with Fight Club, a little bit just with the...
But it's so clouded because it became this impure thing that also kind of got co-opted by the kind of people that Chuck Palahniuk was trying to critique.
Yeah.
Whereas this is such a pure signal to somebody else of, it's a signal of revolt and rebellion that I think further enriches the story and the work that she did.
For sure. I feel like we might see that symbol coming up a little bit in somewhere.
Who's to say?
But yeah, so we all agree it deserves to be remade in due time.
Yeah.
Into different formats, not the movies.
Give it a decade.
Give it some time. And so we're already coming up on, we already passed the decade since the first one came out.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I feel so old. But yeah, so that's it. This was a long one. It's a long-winded one. But thanks for sticking with us, because it's a good one to stick with this. Our guest
Sorry for yelling so much about YA novels that I love so much.
We appreciate it.
That's the point of having a guest.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be back in 2-ish weeks with another book.
Yeah.
To movie adaptation, and then just follow us on all the social platforms, Adaptation Pod and the like. And thanks so much.
They're the best. Listen to all their episodes. I'll be back whenever they do Twilight, maybe.
We're doing Twilight. That's a big one.
Twilight.
That's a big one.
All right, thanks, guys. Bye.